Is the window to buy a discounted property coming to an end? With property prices falling, a lot of people are asking the question, is it a good time to buy? Well, today we're going to look at the pros and cons. We know with interest rates increasing, property prices have started to take a bit of a hit, and many Aussies haven't jumped on the opportunity to get in the market. We've seen buyers agency founder Dragon recently come out and say that he predicts that interest rates will start to stabilize and even fall, and by February next year, we'll find that there'll be more buyers becoming active in the market. Dragon also mentioned that with that in mind, there's going to be a window of opportunity to get in the market, and that could soon end as early as 2023. He mentions that this could actually mean that there's a 6-month window for buyers to take advantage of the current market conditions where they can get up to a 10 to 15% discount, with many buyers not really being in the market, so lack of competition, giving them an opportunity to get a cheaper price. We can see with Westpac's prediction on rates, this might actually be something that has a bit of substance behind it because the cash rate is set to peak sometime in 2023. And then as that cash rate comes down, we're going to see borrowing ability increase, potentially more consumer sentiment. We can see that's on a record low at the moment, so that might actually turn, and we might see an uptick in buyers, which will create more competition in the marketplace. A lot of our customers have been asking us recently, with property prices falling, is now a good time to buy? Well, let's look at the pros and cons of buying in a falling market. Now, the first thing, and as a pro in terms of buying in a falling market, it's pretty straightforward, is that you're actually going to be able to get in at a lower price. So in many parts of the country, we're actually now seeing that the values of properties are similar to where they were at the start of 2022. So we've seen an unwinding of sorts where values have actually come back a little bit, and means that you can potentially get in the market for a little bit cheaper. And we can see here, based in certain areas, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, all coming down in August. And if we look at that from a dollar point of view, anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000, depending on which state in Australia you're in. The second pro of buying in a falling market is that properties are taking longer to sell. So at a national level, the median time taken to sell a property has recently increased to 32 days. So that was up until July of this year. That's an increase from a record low of just 20 days that we saw up until November. So we can see this graph still at record levels of low, pretty low in comparison to the last 10 years. But with that upticking, that means you've got a bit more time. There's no more fear of missing out, and that craziness that really drives prices up. The third pro is that lenders are actually offering quite competitive rates for new customers. We've covered this in previous videos. We've seen a bunch of lenders coming out, being very sharp in their offerings and trying to hustle up new business, particularly as potential numbers of new purchases are down. And that's one of the main things that we need to keep in mind. If we have a look here at new loans versus outstanding loans, we can see rates that you're able to get at the moment for a new loan is similar to what you were getting in 2019. So rates are fairly on par with where we are. If you've got an existing loan, you're still paying nearly 0.47% more than you should be. So certainly worthwhile looking into. But we can see the banks are fairly competitive. And even with 5 rate rises, we're still getting variable rates for customers in around that 4%. When COVID happened and we were at 0.01% as a cash rate, the banks were offering about a 2.5% rate. So that's only a 1.5% increase on where we've been. There's been more than 2.5% increases in the cash rate of recent. So that gives you a bit of an understanding of what's actually been happening. The third pro of getting into a falling market is actually getting out of the rental market. Now, we know rental listings over the last number of years has certainly dropped. If we look at a 5-year average, rental listings are actually 1/3 below where they were previously. And vacancies are at record lows. Vacancies are hovering in around that 1.2%. And we're seeing rentals increasing. So on average, over the past 12 months, 9.8% increase on rentals. So if you're renewing a new lease, you're actually going to find that the cost of rents is actually going up. Let's have a look at the cons of buying in a falling market. Now, the first is buying with property values falling. So what this actually means for you is when you purchase a property, price at the time might seem like a good thing. You get in cheap, but the risk is that you're actually over time find that the property might continue to decline in value. What this actually means for yourself is if you're buying with a very short-term focus, the risk is when you sell it, you could actually incur a loss. If you've got a long-term view, we know the market goes through cycles and you can ride it out. That might not be such a bad thing. But if you've got a short-term view, that is going to be a real issue. The second con is mortgage rates are rising. So you need to do your cash flow analysis, get a bit of an understanding on what happens if rates go up by another 0.5%, 1%. What are my repayments going to be? We're seeing that rates are rising at the fastest rate since the 1990s, and banks are passing on these increases. Once again, you want to do your numbers. Make sure you have a little bit of a cash buffer to get you through the hard times, especially if the rates continue to increase. We've seen data there from Westpac saying they're predicting the cash rate to hit 3.35. So still a little bit more to go. Depends on the bank as to how high we go and what their predictions are. But the consensus is there is still a little bit further in terms of a rate rise to go. The third con is vendors actually don't sell much in a declining market. So in the current environment, vendors typically are offering greater prices or greater discounts on properties because they want their properties to be sold. However, they have another option, and that is not to sell. And once what we see when properties prices go down, listings tend to go down with it. So we can see here in this graph, the last 5 years on average, what it's looked like. Certainly not seeing anything below average in terms of listings, but we might start to see that because spring is certainly a busier time of year, and we might see that listings do drop. Ultimately, I think buying is really a personal thing. You've got to, one, be comfortable and confident in your ability to meet your commitments both now and in the future. You've got to have stability in income, an understanding of, yes, this is something that I want to be in long term, because as we said, if you're doing it for short term, you might not actually, you could potentially lose out in the end. But once again, determining whether to buy or sell, whether the market's right or wrong, is probably not the right solution. We always talk about time in the market rather than timing the market. So guys, if you need any help here at Hunter Galloway, feel free to hit us up at huntergalloway.com.au.